Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us at this year's memorial service honoring the men who proudly served on USS Thresher, SSN 593. I'd also like to welcome Thresher family member Miss Viv DeBruzzi. Viv was our family speaker a few years back, and sorrily, Viv has been recently diagnosed with breast cancer. Viv is watching the ceremony, though, with us today via our live stream. We wish that you all keep Viv in your hearts and prayers today and wish for a speedy recovery. I'm Gary Hildreth, former Thresher Base Commander, and honored once again to be your Master of Ceremonies. We, who proudly wear the gold and silver dolphins of the submarine service, can think of no better way to honor and remember Thresher's sailors and the civilian technicians and mechanics who rode her that day, than to once again gather at this time in their memory. For those who are able to, please rise for the parading of the colors, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the playing of our national anthem. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Deb Henderson and Ms. Lori Arsenal will now sing our national anthem. Color guard, retire the colors.
Shoulder on. Right face. Forward march.
Lieutenant Ian Underhill, Navy Chaplain, will now deliver the invocation.
Would you bow with me for the invocation? Eternal Lord God, God of the land and God of the seas, God even under the seas, both now and then, I acknowledge your sovereignty, and I am so very thankful that you are God and I am not, but that we can know you and that we can have relationship with you. And so today, as we remember the tragedy of Thresher and all 129 sailors on eternal patrol, we praise you for their lives. And we acknowledge what President Kennedy said to the press shortly after announcing the loss of Thresher, that the courage and dedication of these men of the sea pushing ahead into the depths to advance our knowledge and capabilities is no less than that of their forefathers, who led the advance on the frontiers of our civilization. And so, God, we are humbled by the sacrifice of these men and families, and we're forever grateful for each of their lives. Bless each loved one and friend gathered here today for the special remembrance. Remind us all of the frailty of life and the importance of eternal life. I ask through Christ my Lord. Amen.
Please be seated. When a new chapter of United States Submarine Veterans was organized in 1989, those charter members, in their infinite wisdom, decided to honor the memory of their shipmates lost on USS Thresher by naming the base for Thresher. And as members of the United States Submarine Veterans, we live by a creed that states, to perpetuate the memory of our shipmates who gave their lives in the pursuit of duties while serving their country, that their dedication, deeds, and supreme sacrifice be a constant source of motivation toward greater accomplishments. We pledge loyalty and patriotism to the United States of America and its Constitution. First and foremost, I would like to welcome our honored guest today, Captain David Hunt, 85th Commander, Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. Thank you, sir, for your leadership and guidance at the Navy's finest naval shipyard. Your commitment to the workforce and the highest standards solidifies our purpose with this memorial service. Rear Admiral James Pitts. Admiral, your distinguished service to your country and the United States Navy speaks clearly of your honor and dedication to the men and women who operate and maintain today's submarines. Thank you for accepting our invitation to be this afternoon's keynote speaker. In representing the Thresher families this year, Mr. Scott McCord will be offering remarks. Scott, your participation in this memorial service makes this even more special for all of us. Thank you. In the audience, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to recognize various groups who have joined us today. Family members of those who sailed on Thresher, former Thresher crew members, members of numerous submarine veterans and submarine veterans of World War II organizations, officers and crews of the submarines presently undergoing overhaul here at the shipyard, officers, staff, and employees of Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, and the proud and dedicated Naval Sea Cadet Corps. Thank you all for attending today. Our first guest speaker this afternoon is Captain David Hunt. Captain Hunt reigns from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and was commissioned as an ensign upon graduation from Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University in 1990. In addition, Captain Hunt has earned an MBA from the Lally School of Management at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute and a Naval Engineer degree and Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Captain Hunt has served aboard the nuclear-powered fleet ballistic missile submarine USS Daniel Boone and nuclear-powered attack submarine USS Bluefish. In July 2016, Captain Hunt assumed command of America's oldest continuously operating naval shipyard, Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the podium Captain David Hunt, 85th Commander, Portsmouth Naval Shipyard.
Thresher families and former crew members, rear admiral pits, submarine veterans, shipmates, distinguished community leaders, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. I am honored to stand before you today and grateful to our submarine veterans who have invited me to participate in this very special and touching memorial service. I am confident in assuring you that we have not forgotten the 129 heroes who sailed on the USS Thresher that April day in 1963. As 85th Shipyard Commander of Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, I am privileged to work alongside the finest sailors, engineers, and craftspeople in the nation. They too have not forgotten the ultimate sacrifice these men paid for the freedoms we so enjoy. For those with ties to the Portsmouth area and those in the submarine business, the connections to that ever-receding day have closeness that seems to never change, to come back and reconnect us in sobering ways. How we respond to these connections, how we resolve to do our part to prevent another Thresher, is part of our culture and our heritage that is relevant to each and every one of us here at Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. From the newest apprentice on the shop floor up to the shipyard senior leadership. The loss of the Thresher, her crew, and the civilians from Sperry, Raytheon, and Portsmouth Naval Shipyard that sail her still weighs heavily in all of our hearts and minds. Every day that passes, we work just a little harder and just a little bit smarter to make sure our work is of the highest quality. We hold one another accountable to those highest standards. Our workforce is responsible for the maintenance performed on our Navy submarines and accountable to the ship's commanders and crew. It's personal at this shipyard. It's not just that the price of failure is too high, it's that the very idea of failure is unacceptable for us. Our tradition of handing down trade experience from one generation to the next helps ensure the quality of our product today. It is a hallmark of excellence and the admiration of the fleet, a testimony to those who paid the ultimate sacrifice and those who vowed never again. Thank you so much for attending today as we pay tribute to these American heroes.
Thank you, Captain. Our next speaker is Thresher family member, Mr. Scott McCord. Scott is the third son of Machinist Mate First Class Donald James McCord. Very special part of our ceremony, Scott graciously accepted our invitation to share a few of his personal thoughts with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the podium Mr. Scott McCord.
Thank you, Gary. Distinguished guests, sailors, friends, and fellow Thresher family members, it is truly an honor for me to be able to speak here today as we remember the 129 men who lost their lives 54 years ago. This is the 54th Thresher Memorial Service. So let's look at that for just a moment. A memorial service, by definition, is a gathering of people who together commemorate the life of someone who has died. So with that in mind, we will today mourn the loss of those 129 men as we have for the past 53 years. These men, sons, brothers, cousins and uncles, husbands, friends, and in my case, fathers, who today would be grandfathers, great-grandfathers, and maybe even a great-great-grandfather. We mourn today because we miss them, because they left our lives way too early in life. Some of you here knew them well, while others, like myself, are just chasing memories, longing to know not only not only who they were, but who we are, or better yet, why we are who we are today. As we mourn, we should also take solace in the fact that these men, our loved ones, sacrifices were not made in vain. It is through their sacrifice, and thus our sacrifice as well, that the Navy gained the SubSafe program, a program that to date has shown and prevented the loss, any other loss like Thresher, to ever occur again. And the United States Naval Service, Submarine Service, has been and remains the world's most technologically advanced submarine service in the civilized world. And we, each and every one of us here today, has gained something else, something we can be proud of. We've gained family. Yes, we lost a loved one that can never be replaced, but we've also gained many in the Thresher family. And I include all of the sailors, both serving today, in the past, and in the future, as part of that family. But most importantly to me, we have gained some insight into understanding just who we are and why we are who we are. I hope in the next few minutes I can explain, or you will understand what that means to me. I'm not sure which one we're up to. I forgot to tell you. Okay. I would like to introduce you to my dad. Donald James McCord Sr., Machinist Mate First Class, USS Thresher, SSN 593. Husband to Amy, father to 3 boys, Donald James, Michael Thomas, and myself, Scott. He was a son, a brother, an uncle, a cousin, and a friend. My dad was born 20 September 1930 in Hammond, Indiana. He grew up in a small town called Morocco, which, if anybody knows the history of Indiana, you'll know that that's an extremely rural area with a population of less than 1,000. He went to school at the Morocco High School, where he ran track, played basketball, and football for the Morocco Beavers. And he, like many other kids in that area, enjoyed hunting and fishing. But like some kids who grew up in a predominantly agricultural area, in other words, a pretty boring area, he didn't know what he was going to do with life after high school. And those of you younger than 60 that are in this room, imagine for a moment growing up in a rural area of northwest Indiana during the 1940s. Harry Truman was president. World War II was still raging on. Hollywood movies like The Maltese Falcon, Citizen Kane, and Yankee Doodle Dandy were playing on the big screens across the nation. And swing music was just totally the gas. Knowing that his opportunities were limited, to say the least, limited to either farming or working in a factory, and a strong desire to do something great with his life, on 7 November 1947, at the age of 18, Dad enlisted in the Navy. He did his recruit training at Great Lakes Naval Base, and it was here that he made the decision that he wanted to be a little bit more. He wanted to be a submariner. He applied to and was accepted to sub school on 28 February 1948, he graduated 28 February 1948, and the school here in New London. Keep in mind, this is an important part, that, at least important part to me, he had a sweetheart back home. He was assigned his first boat. His first boat was USS Runner, SS 476. It was a board runner that he became qualified in submarines and earned his Silver Dolphins. And we just heard, if you were in here before, you heard how difficult it is to earn those Silver Dolphins. I didn't know until just today what you had to go through. He also saw service aboard the USS Burfish, SS 312, and the USS Trumpetfish, SS 425. Now, somewhere between all of these boats, Dad did manage to find the time to marry Mom and start a family. They were married on 26 October 1952 in Morocco. It was also in this area, again, I'm going from stories that I've been told. It was somewhere in here that the Cold War was warming up and the new nuclear technologies were coming about, and he had heard that there's a whole new class of boat coming out, and he wanted to be a part of that new boat and that new technology. So he applied to and was accepted into nuclear power school because he wanted to be one of those guys, one of those who were on the cutting edge. So with the family in tow, we followed, and I say we collectively because I wasn't really born yet. But Dad finished nuclear power training school and awaited his orders for his next boat. And during that time, he was tending to family business, and on 16 April 1962, he finally received his orders for his new boat. He got his first nuclear-powered boat, Thresher. He went to school to serve on a nuke, and he got his boat. And what a boat she was. Thresher was top of the line. She was sleek. She was fast. She was quiet. And she could dive deeper than anything to date. Thresher was the ultimate in seek and destroy. She had technologies that people only dreamed of back then. The super sonar system that allowed her to hear other submarines and other ships long before she could ever be heard. And she was built right here on the shipyard. She was the pride of everyone at that shipyard, the pride of everyone who touched her, everyone who saw her. Hell, she was the pride of the entire nation. And I would think that she was also the fear of every enemy. And my dad got to serve on her. He was beyond proud of the accomplishments he had made, both for himself and his family. Dad was aboard when they did testing off of the Carolinas, and I've heard some stories of the time she was docked down in Florida after some testing down there, and I was informed by those who were telling the stories that those stories were still classified, if you get my drift. Sounds to me like Florida was the place to be back in the 1960s. When she left port on 9 April 1963 to begin her deep dive test, it was just another day, and all went well. But on 10 April 1963, the world changed for so many people. Growing up, my mother didn't speak much of the Thresher disaster, or of Dad for that matter. She had remarried, and it was not a topic that was brought up. But I do remember her telling me one story. She learned that the boat was overdue from a friend who had come over. It was another Thresher wife who had come over to her trailer and asked her if she had heard the news. She said she hadn't, and they both sat at the table and waited. She said her worst fears were realized when she saw the military staff car pull up in front of the trailer. And in her words, that goddamn car. And she knew then. 129 families lost husbands, fathers, sons, and friends. The Portsmouth Naval Shipyard lost their baby, their pride and joy as she was. And the entire country felt that loss. From talking with some people here in Maine and in New Hampshire, the whole area kind of shut down. Stores and schools closed along with the shipyard, and people were just, for lack of a better word, they were just lost. And Mom moved us back back to Indiana, and not much was ever said from that point on. All of Dad's things were neatly packed away in a trunk, tucked away in a closet, and life just kind of went on. I was so young back then that I really didn't know what all had happened, didn't quite grasp it. But I do remember Mom would take us up to the Great Lakes Naval Shipyard and our training center to go to the PX. And I remember going with Mom and my two brothers, and I always thought it was just totally cool that these men that were walking around there would snap a salute to these little kids. I didn't know why they did it, but I thought it was awesome. Today I understand. Now we're going to jump ahead. Many, many years had passed. My mom has passed away, and it just left us three boys who are men now. We had started our own lives, and I was at work as a paramedic in Newton County. I'd been a highly trained paramedic for years. And a few years back, I started wondering a little bit about Dad and the Thresher and just exactly what had happened. So I started emailing back and forth to a couple of guys that seemed to know what they were talking about, John and Kevin. And one day while I was at work, I got a phone call from Kevin. This is where I'm going to tear up, I'm sure. Kevin asked me if I was going to come out to the 48th annual memorial service. I gave Kevin my standard answer of, well, I'd really hope to, which, if I ever tell you I really hope to, that means probably not. But after some chatting back and forth on the phone with him, now keep in mind, I'm at work. I'm at the ambulance service. I'm standing out in the garage between my ambulances. After some chatting back and forth with Kevin, he asked me one question that sealed the deal. He asked me if I thought my kids would be interested in laying the wreath. Now you have to understand, again, I was a highly trained paramedic, years of service, my heart was cold from dealing with the sick and injured, immune to any feelings. And I was standing in between my ambulances with tears streaming down my face. Hell yes, I was coming out, and my kids came out with me, and we loved every second of it. This would turn out to be one of the most profound days of my life, and I'm hoping my kids' lives, who I believe are watching on the live stream. I and my kids got to meet the real heroes, John and some of the other guys who had actually served on Thresher, who actually knew Dad, who knew Grandpa. And I met a lot of my new Thresher family. And made some friends. And now this is my 4th memorial service. So over the years, I have learned about my dad, and in doing so, I've learned about myself. Why I am who I am. Some who knew my dad said that I'm a lot like him. And when I hear that, it brings a smile to my face. Because I think he was probably a great husband to my mom, a great dad to us kids, and a great friend to me. We, the Thresher family, and I'm charging all of you, must continue to share the stories of our loved ones and of Thresher. And those of you who serve today and will serve in the future must never forget Thresher and the 129 men aboard. For when we forget, it's then that our family has died in vain. So I'm hoping it's a picture of Dad up there. I forgot to cue. But so for you, Dad, all your shipmates and all your friends, rest easy. Sailors, rest your oars. We've got this. Thank you all.
Thank you, Scott. I know that your father and all of those who were lost that day are still looking down at them, at their families and friends, and are so very proud of how heroically you all have carried on without them. Thank you very much. Probably the toughest job today is the keynote speaker, who always has to follow the family member. This afternoon, we are very fortunate to have a former shipmate of mine, Rear Admiral James Pitts. Admiral Pitts ranged from Milton, Florida, and graduated from the United States Naval Academy in 1986 with a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering. He has also earned a master's degree in National Security Affairs at the Naval Postgraduate School. Admiral Pitts has served aboard nuclear-powered attack submarines, Portsmouth-built USS Grayling. He's also served aboard the USS Plunger, USS Hammerhead, USS Hyman G. Rickover, and 2 tours on USS Tucson. In 2016, Rear Admiral Pitts assumed command of Undersea Warfighting Development Center at Groton, Connecticut. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the podium Rear Admiral James Pitts, Commander, Undersea Warfighting Development Center.
So Gary, thank you very much for the kind introduction. As Gary mentioned, we served together on USS Tucson. He was my chief of the boat when I was executive officer, and it's always great to see old shipmates, and thank you again for the support and mentoring then and now. Scott, thank you very much for those words that you talked about today, your father. It really does bring us home for why we are actually here, for this memorial of that tragedy, USS Thresher. So Thresher families, friends, and crew members, members of the silent service, both past and present, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. What an honor it is for Marianne and I to be here in the beautiful Seacoast area, the site of America's oldest continuously operating naval shipyard. When I was first offered this opportunity to speak to you today, I accepted without hesitation. I've been a submariner for over 30 years, and I can think of few events that are as important in the history of nuclear-powered submarines as the one that occurred that fateful day in April 1963. Today we gather to commemorate the lives of the 129 crew members and civilians from Sperry, Raytheon, and Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, whose sacrifice and legacy would forever change the nation, the Navy, and above all, our submarine community. USS Thresher, SSN 593, was the first in her class. She was named after a powerful open ocean creature, the thresher shark. And for those of you who may be unaware, these sea-dwelling predators are equipped with a powerful tail to stun their prey, as well as a sophisticated circulatory system that allows them to retain their heat and dive to depths in excess of 1,600 feet. USS Thresher was aptly named. She was equipped with state-of-the-art technology and designed for optimum performance. In fact, she was the most technically complex machine ever designed and built by man at that time. She could dive deeper, operate quieter, and perform better than any other submarine in the world. Her designers and shipyard builders had pushed the envelope of technology and engineering limits that no one had ever witnessed before. And yet, we're gathered here today. On April 10th, 1963, our nation suffered the first ever nuclear-powered submarine disaster when USS Thresher was lost at sea, not more than a couple hundred miles from here. This tragedy rocked the silent service, and our entire nation anguished over the loss of those 129 brave souls on board. But something else happened. The wheels of change were set in motion. We were determined not to allow these heroes to have died in vain. The Navy worked tirelessly, exhausting every possible avenue to find the root causes of this tragedy, and no stone was left unturned. And the effort didn't stop there. The Navy expeditiously implemented vast changes to the processes and procedures involved in the design, building, and operation of our nation's submarines. These changes became the foundation of the SubSafe program, which for 54 years has kept our submarines safe at sea. Over the years, thousands upon thousands of shipyard workers, engineers, and sailors have been instilled with an incredible work discipline, an attention to detail, and a dedication to safety. This was a paradigm shift that occurred as a direct result of the loss of the Thresher. And that single, most important defining event has ensured the safe operation of our submarines at sea and ingrained that culture of safety in every submariner. As commander of the Undersea Warfighting Development Center, or UWDC, it is with humble pride that I say I witness this culture every day. We apply its principles as we push the envelope of science and technology in the harshest environments, from the tropics to the far reaches of the Arctic. We rigorously develop procedures and operating instructions to train our sailors to understand the machines that we have built. We are developing the latest and most advanced technologies to keep our warfighting edge and at the same time, our sailors safe. What we do today is the direct result of having to learn the harshest of lessons from that fateful April day in 1963. Over my own 30-plus year career, I have witnessed and been part of this culture of discipline, attention to detail, questioning attitude, and dedication to safety. On multiple occasions, in every one of my 8 tours on submarines and on submarine squadron staffs, there's been times where our submarines have been held in port while a submarine safety concern was being verified and or adjudicated. Every one of those delays was absolutely worth that dedication to safety. Any delay is better than a catastrophe. And at the same time, the threat of negligence and complacency is always still very real. The need to uphold the lessons we've learned has never been more important, as our submarines are continuing to increase in complexity and sophistication. As a result, we must continue to instill the cultural values that we have learned in our earlier generation and put up our guard against lowering any standards or accepting mediocrity. It has been said that the challenge of history is to remember the past and incorporate it into our present. As I speak to you this afternoon, 54 years after the loss of USS Thresher, you can be confident to know that we are doing well to meet this challenge. To the members of the Silent Service and to the dedicated men and women who support them, I want to thank you and challenge you to remain strong in your commitment to ensuring that a similar tragedy never occurs. We owe it to them, the men of the Thresher, to continue to hone our attention to detail and our focus on safety. To the surviving Thresher family members, friends, and loved ones, I offer my sincerest condolences to you on behalf of the United States Navy. Your families have suffered the greatest tragedy, and no doubt the pain of their loss is ever present. I know that all of you are proud of the incredible contribution of these fine sailors and dedicated civilians. In fact, with each passing year, I think their contribution becomes more evident as we continue to increase forward deployed operations to protect the interests of the American people. Thank you all for taking the time to be here today to honor the heroes who served aboard the Thresher. May God bless you all, the men of the USS Thresher and the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral. We can't thank you enough for being our keynote speaker today. Always gracing our service with their beautiful voices and musical talent, it just wouldn't be the same without Lori and Deb's rendition of the Navy hymn. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, please welcome Miss Lori Arsenal and Miss Deb Henderson, daughters of Chief Benjamin Tillman J. Arsenal.
Strong to say
Thank you, Lori and Deb. We never tire of hearing you sing that song. The tolling of the ship's bell is a solemn remembrance of our shipmates, men who sacrificed their lives aboard USS Thresher in the service of their country. John F. Kennedy once said, "A nation reveals itself not only by the men it produces, but also by the men it honors and the men it remembers." I now would like to invite Thresher Bay submarine veterans Mr. Jerry Schock and Mr. Robert Flannery, along with Thresher family member Miss Victoria Soliday, to proceed with the tolling of the ship's bell. Out of respect to our departed shipmates, we would normally rise during this part of the ceremony. Instead, I would ask that you remain seated so that all may be able to better see the slide presentation. Thank you.
Fred Philip Abrams. Phil Harcourt Allen. Tilden Joseph Arsenal. Ronald Claire Badcock. Ronald Eugene Bain. Daniel W. Beal, Jr. John Edward Bell. Robert Donald Biederman. John Hillary Billings. Edgar Solomon Babbitt. Gerald Charles Foster. George Gracie. Richard Paul Graham. Richard James Karkowski. Patrick Wayne Carmody. Stephen George Cady. Robert E. Herron. Edward Christensen. Larry William Clausen. Thomas Edward Clements. Merrill Francis Collier. Kenneth Ray Corcoran. Kenneth James Critchley. Francis Michael Cummings. Paul Chevalier Courier. Samuel Joseph DeBruzzi. Clyde Elcock Davison III. Donald Clifford Day. Roy Overton Denny Jr. Richard Roy Desjardins. Peter Joseph Cabela. George J. Deneen. Michael John Denola. Don Roy Dundas. Troy Earl Dyer. Richard K. Fisher. Elwood Henry Forney. Raymond Peter Cody. Larry Wayne Freeman. Gregory Joseph Fusco. Joseph Andrew Bullock Jr. Napoleon Thomas Garcia. John Edmund Garner. Pat Mahaffey Garner. Robert William Gaynor. Robert Howard Gosnell. John Gilbert Grafton. William Edward Graham. Paul Alfred Garrett. Aaron Jackie Gunter. Richard Charles Hall. John Wesley Harvey. Norman Theodore Hayes. Laird Glenn Heiser. Marvin Theodore Helsius. James John Henry Jr. Leonard Ogatobler Bueller. Joseph Hartshorn O. James Porter Hodge. John Francis Hudson. John Penfield England. Maurice Frank Jacquet. Bronner Garth Johnson. Edward Albert Johnson. Richard Lee Johnson. Robert Eugene Johnson. Thomas Benjamin Johnson. Richard Williams Jones. Edmund Joseph Palooza. Thomas Charles Hance. Robert Dennis Kearney. Ronald Dean Taylor. George John Kaiser. Billy Max Clear. Robert Lee Craig. George Ronald Croner. Donald William Custer. Norman Gilbert Lanoet. Wayne Wilfred Lavoy. John Sheldon Lyman.
Templeman Norwood Mabry Jr. Frank John Malinsky. Richard Herbert Mann Jr. Julius Francis Marolo Jr. Douglas Ray McClellan. Donald James McCord. Carl Paul McDonough. Sidney Lynn Middleton. Henry Charles Moreau. Ronald Arthur Hughes. James Alton Musselwhite. Donald Emery Knoll. Walter Jack Lewis. John Daniel Norris. Chesley Charles Odie. Franklin James Palmer. Guy Carrington Parsons Jr. Roscoe Cleveland Pennington. James Glenn Peters. James Frank Philippi. Daniel Andrew Tilton. Richard Podwell. Robert Dan Prescott. John C. Reagan. James Patrick Ritchie. Curtis Robinson. Glenn Alva Roundtree. Anthony Alexander Rashetsky. James Michael Sheely. Benjamin Nathan Schaefer. John Davis Schaefer. Joseph Thomas Shimko. Ernest Michael Shotwell. Alan Dennison Sinek. John Smars Jr. William Harry Smith Jr. James Leonard Snyder. Ronald Al Solomon. Donald T. Stagmore. Robert Edwin Steiner. Roger Edwin Van Heller. Joseph Alfred Walski. David Allen Wassel. Lawrence Eugene Whitney. Charles Bud Whitney. John Joseph Wiley. Donald Edward Wise. Ronald Eugene Wolf. J. Henry Zweifel.
To those who knew them, sailed with them, called them shipmates, they are very real, and we shall never forget them as they sail on eternal patrol. On behalf of Thresher Base, I would like to thank those who have made today's program possible. Rear Admiral James Pitts, thank you again, sir, for joining us this afternoon. Captain David Hunt, as always, thank you, sir. Scott, your sincere words and fond memories touched us all. Thank you. Lori, Deb, and Victoria, as always, thank you for your continued support of this service. The Portsmouth Naval Shipyard Color Guard and Honor Guard, along with the Naval Sea Cadet Corps. Our bugler this afternoon, former shipmate of mine, Mr. George Stevens. And finally, to Piper Angus Fisher, thank you, young man. A service like this just doesn't happen. It takes a lot of hard work and determination to overcome the daily challenges one encounters when trying to organize an event of this magnitude. None have worked harder than Kevin and Robin Gallias. Without their commitment to our Thresher families and the men who sailed on board Thresher, this service would not have been possible. Thank you again for your unfailing dedication over the many years of perpetuating the memories of these American heroes. And to all of you who came here today to honor this special day and remembering USS Thresher, we shall never forget them. Lieutenant Underhill, will you please come forward, sir? Prior to the benediction, if I could, I would like to invite you and Thresher Base Commander Kevin Gallias to the podium for a special presentation.
Thresher family members recently had the opportunity to tour the USS Providence. Commander Grizzle, where are you? Where's Commander? Where's he at? There he is. Please stand. Everybody, a round of applause, Commander Griffith, please. Those of you that remember last year's speech by Captain Green, remember he mentioned during that speech that there were small plaques placed on the pews in the Thresher Memorial Chapel on the Shipyard, with 129 names of the men lost aboard Thresher. So as part of the tour, I asked whether or not we could get on the inside that chapel with the family members we had. At first it didn't look like it, and Gary, once again, and the Shipyard, Captain, thank you, pulled it off, and we were able to get these family members in there. And I can't tell you how moved they were. Fascinating. To that end, I would like to present one of 6 awards that have been given. 5 have been given so far out of the 6 that have been made. To Lieutenant Ian Underhill, CHC USN, for perpetuating the memories of the men lost aboard USS Thresher, SSN 593. We sincerely thank you for all you've done in improving that chapel. And I will be posting pictures of the other names as soon as I can get on the yard and take them on our website. Thank you very much. One more thing, when I hand these awards out, they've been given to Gary Hildreth, they've been given to Peter Kester, Marblehead Base for the Thresher float. Commander Grizzle has received one of these. Who am I missing, Gary? Thank you. Yes, Don Kerr for all the articles he did just prior to the 50th on the Thresher families. When I hand these awards out, I do this anticipating that we will receive continued support as well down the line. Now, Lieutenant Underhill is headed to Hawaii. I see a trip to Hawaii in my future. He's going out to the submarine maintenance facility. And what I'm hoping will happen is that you will be an evangelist for our cause as well out there. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
We're not finished yet, Chaplain. Lori and Captain, please come forward.
So just last week, I got a call from the Shipyard from a woman in the office, Laura Jean, and she noticed the painting on the Thresher website that I keep, and she asked if she could buy a print of it, and I said, really? It's just an amateur painting hanging on my wall that I did. But she really wanted it, and I said, well, let's have one for the chapel, too. Would you ask the chaplain, please, what size he would like? And he said, the biggest one possible. So here it is. We have one for Laura Jean in the office and one for the chapel.
Okay, Chaplain, I think we're ready for the benediction.
Finally. Thank you. Would you bow with me for the benediction? Lord God, as we conclude this part of the ceremony, we do give recognition to the Spirit that has made our country great. And for those willing to give totally of themselves, even unto death. Would you make us as a nation deeply grateful for the prosperity and the protection provided by the heroism and the faithfulness of these 129 men and all those who pursue their business under the great seas today. I ask this through Christ my Lord. Amen.
At this time, I would ask that we adjourn to the waterfront for the wreath ceremony. Thank you all for attending today, and have a safe and memorable weekend.